At 2:14 a.m., the Solaris Crown Casino hummed with the same hypnotic rhythm. It carried every night dealers flipping cards with mechanical precision, gamblers gripping their last hopes in the form of brightly colored chips, and machines chiming with artificial luck but behind two steel-reinforced doors. In a chilled surveillance room filled with soft electronic buzzing, one man sat quietly, controlling the casino's eyes without anyone realizing he was preparing to blind them. His name was Marcus Halle, a 42-year-old senior CCTV engineer who rarely spoke, rarely smiled and rarely drew attention, but who understood the casino's massive network of 400 surveillance cameras better than anyone alive. On one of the screens, a high-stakes baccarat player moved nervously, placing a bet so large that the surveillance software should have immediately flagged it for compulsory review. Yet when that moment arrived, Marcus tapped a single key, causing the feed to glitch for precisely 1.7 seconds before resuming smoothly, as if nothing had happened. That tiny flicker too short for alarms too subtle for human iris. The exact frame that would have revealed the gambler's losing hand, and within minutes, the casino unknowingly lost the first portion of what would become $32 million collapse. Marcus didn't smile, didn't react, didn't even blink. He simply executed the plan he had been refining for 4 months, a plan rooted in a discovery he made years earlier during a rushed renovation. A forgotten legacy subnetwork connected to old IP cameras completely unmonitored, unlogged and accessible only to someone who knew the system's architecture intimately. Marcus grew up fascinated with electronics, often taking apart radios he found at junk shops and rebuilding them with improved wiring, a hobby that led him into military communications, where he mastered encrypted systems and surveillance equipment before transitioning into civilian casino tech roles. At Solaris Crown, he became the quiet guardian of the surveillance grid. The person maintenance crews called when a feed stuttered, when cables overheated, when monitors flickered, and through years of repairs, he learned patterns. Nobody else cared about cameras that lagged on humid nights, feeds that dissensed during shift changes, blind spots created by new lighting installations, details that were meaningless to the average operator, but deeply valuable to someone who might one day wish to manipulate what the casino saw. During the 2017 expansion of the high-stakes floor, Marcus found the isolated subnet, a cluster of outdated lines still connected to the main grid but invisible to the modern auditing software. A hidden doorway into the casino's visual system. He didn't act on it immediately. Instead, he spent months understanding staff routines, noting when surveillance operators were the most tired, when supervisors walked away for coffee, when shifts overlapped and responsibility became blurry. He also tracked the behavior of a particular gambler, one who routinely placed enormous, irrational bets in the early morning hours when oversight thinned. Marcus never needed an accomplice. He only needed patterns, timing, and luck. Over 4 months, he built a lightweight script that could freeze a live feed for under 2 seconds, patch in cached frames, and resume as if nothing happened, bypassing the automated fraud detection that only activated during visible anomalies. If the freeze occurred before the bet registered in the system, the software interpreted it as standard network latency rather than manipulation. It was flawless, untraceable, and undetectable unless someone knew exactly what to look for, which nobody did. On the night of February 13, 2018, Marcus executed the plan. He arrived on shift, unnoticed as always, and took advantage of the fact that 2 surveillance staff members had called in sick, leaving him with partial control of the room. At 1:52 a.m., he opened a diagnostic window that concealed his script. At 2:11, the target gambler placed his first maximum value bet. Marcus waited for the exact millisecond before the bet locked into the system, tapped a key, and the freeze executed brief. Perfect, invisible. The gambler won. No alarms triggered. No supervisors noticed anything unusual, and even the gambler himself didn't realize he had benefited from an invisible hand guiding fate. Over the next 20 minutes, Marcus repeated the process 7 more times. 8 impossible wins spaced apart just enough to appear statistically unlikely but not unbelievable. By the 4th win, the gambler began to tremble. By the 6th, he could barely hold the chips. By T8, he stared at the table like he had been touched by divine intervention. Marcus simply watched, expressionless, making micro-adjustments to maintain the illusion of randomness. When it was over, Marcus redirected the payout confirmation packets through internal accounting to avoid additional scrutiny, and the system approved the transfer of chips to the gambler's digital account. The gambler cashed out a portion, wandered out of the casino dazed, and Marcus immediately erased his script, restored the subnetwork to default settings, wiped logs in a pattern consistent with an automated cleanup cycle, placed his ID badge on the workstation, and left the building. No camera captured him leaving because he had long ago learned exactly where the blind spots were, and in some cases, he had created them. When supervisors arrived the next morning, accounting initially believed the massive loss was just a terrible stroke of luck, until one analyst noticed irregular timestamps, and a reviewer spotted a brief freeze. But the footage appeared clean. The cards were visible, the gambler's hands were natural, and the wins looked legitimate. When the casino attempted to locate Marcus for questioning, they realized he had never clocked out, never returned to his apartment, never used his phone, and every personal device was missing. His bank accounts were untouched. His passport still lay in his bedroom drawer. It was as if he had walked out of the building and vanished into thin air. 18 hours later, authorities finally concluded he had planned his disappearance long before executing the heist. But the final twist came 6 months later, when a technician discovered an encrypted file hidden deep inside an old server, containing only one sentence: "Even the watchers can be watched." Attached was a fragment of Marcus' code pointing to a decommissioned router in an abandoned housing block. Investigators found a single empty room inside, dusty, silent, containing nothing but a cut Ethernet cable and an impression on the floor where a laptop once sat. It wasn't a hideout, it was a message. Specialists now believe Marcus didn't flee the country at all. He simply deleted the systems that could track him. He erased his own digital existence and walked into a life nobody was watching. In the end, Solaris Crown learned the most terrifying lesson a casino can face. The house only wins when its eyes are open. But the man who controlled those eyes proved he could close them whenever he wanted, leaving behind $32 million lost a gambler, still confused by his miracle night, and a ghost named Marcus Halley, who planned his disappearance long before he ever planned the theft.